iHeartRadio Broadway, driven by Mercedes-Benz. The best or nothing.
Hey there, Michael.
Hello.
I am so excited because of somebody that I have admired for so long, who's won 6 Tony Awards, so it's not just me, joins us today, Audra McDonald. Audra, who is now on Broadway, and Frankie and Johnny. It is so nice to see you, Audra.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You know, it occurs to me, Audra, I have seen every single performance you've given on Broadway.
Whoa.
I go back to, it was Carousel, right? That was
yes.
Yes,
Well,
Carousel?
Yes. Yeah, well, Secret Garden. But
I saw that too.
Oh, my
What part did
Lanta.
you play in the Secret Garden?
What part could I have played? I was the Aya. That was the only thing I could have done.
I'd forgotten you. You know, that's a very underrated show, I think, the
It's
Secret
a beautiful show, yeah.
Garden. Lucy Simon score, right?
Yeah, Lucy Simon score and Marcia Norman did the book. Yeah.
Beautiful.
I loved it. I loved being a part
I haven't
of
missed an Audra McDonald performance.
That's wonderful. So
Ever.
you saw her in Lady Day as well?
Oh, yeah, terrific.
Unbelievable, right?
And I really liked Raisin in the Sun.
Like, you're not even in the room,
thank
Audra.
you.
We're just like, wasn't she amazing? Like, I really love her in Lady Day.
she never gives a bad performance. It's incredible.
Oh, that's not true.
Was so honest and real and authentic. I thought your performance in Frankie and Johnny is just so beautiful and
Thank you. Thank
moving.
you so much. Thank you.
You and Michael Shannon together have incredible chemistry and work so well together.
Yeah, I really lucked out. We met each other doing this. I had never seen his work and huge fan of his work, and was actually a little, when they approached me with this project and they said, would you like to do this with Michael Shannon? He was already attached to it. I jumped at the opportunity, but I was scared because he's a force. He's an incredible force, and I thought I don't know if I'm going to be able to keep up with him.
You're right there to match him.
But I thought I'm going to do this because I'm going to learn something. Being in I keep referring to it as being on the court, on the tennis court, or being in the ring. That's what it feels like,
Uh-huh.
But I'm going to learn something from this, and when I did Masterclass with Zoe Caldwell those years ago, it wasn't a two-hander of a play because there was a couple of different characters in it. But as far as I was concerned, I was only on stage with Zoe. And I feel the same way about Michael, that every night it's a masterclass for me. I'm getting a chance to learn.
Well, let me ask you then, because I remember Masterclass very well, also by Terrence McNally.
Yes.
So when you were a younger actress then and you're watching a legend like Zoe Caldwell, what did you observe? What did you kind of take from her that you thought, I can make my acting better?
Her presence in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Zoe... never gave a performance that was less than 150%. Mm-hmm. And she is so intense in life as well. And she carries all that intensity onto the stage. And she leaves everything on the stage. I think what I learned is that you have no right to be a lazy actor. You have to continue to work. You have to continue to evolve. Even once the show is set, you still have to continue to find new things in the character and listen as the character offers up little secrets to you every night. Zoe's performance was always changing. I mean, in that it was always evolving. Mm-hmm. And she demanded that of you, even without her saying it, because if you were going to survive being on stage with her, and if you weren't going to just be swept up in the hurricane that was Zoe Caldwell, and in the same way, the hurricane that is Michael Shannon, you have to be there and be present. And
what is? I feel like it's such a basic acting question, but really, what is your process? I know you went to Juilliard, but before you step foot on that stage and you're ready to go with Michael Shannon.
Mm-hmm. Well, I went to Juilliard as a singer, and so I studied classical music there. So even though I was in the same building with Viola Davis and Laura Linney and Jean Triplehorn and Michael Hayden, all those folks, they were all in the acting department, and I was not. So we didn't get acting classes in the classical music department. So I never learned a technique, but I have learned by being able to share the stage with some pretty great people, and so I've just learned by practical application and observing and trying to pick every brilliant brain that I've been on stage with. And so, long way of saying that my process is making sure that I've done my homework ahead of time. And there's some things that you could skip over about Frankie that I thought were very important to delve into, especially. And one was learning all I could about PTSD. Mm-hmm. Victims of domestic violence are all PTSD in some way or another, and how that manifests itself, and it's all over. I mean, Terrence, without maybe even if he didn't even study the symptoms and the effects of PTSD, it's all in the script right there. And so, learning what her triggers are. I spent some time sitting in diners observing certain waitresses, especially waitresses who had seemed like they had been there for a
long
while.
time.
Yeah.
That sense of being trapped.
Being trapped, and also because Frankie very specifically says, there's a whole other side of you I never saw when we were at work. She says that to Johnny, and I'm like, I'm wondering, who is Frankie at work? And she's someone that displays probably weariness, but also a lot more confidence than she has in her actual life, because that's her only stage, And so I snuck around to a couple of diners and spent some time, and met one lady in particular that I fell in love with. I just thought she was an amazing woman, and she had no wedding ring on her finger. She was probably about 50, I'm 49, almost 49. And someone had given me some flowers for another thing that I had to do in the morning before I went and sat in this diner. And at the end of my time of kind of watching her without her realizing I was watching her, I said, I've got these flowers, and I'm going to they're gorgeous, and I just don't know what to do with them. And I'm feeling overwhelmed with the idea of wanting to give them to you. Do you want these flowers? And she's like, honey, are you kidding? And I was like, no, I want to give them to you. And she's like, this is the sweetest thing. Thank you so much. And she knew everybody's name in the diner. I mean, the customers as well. And you could see her just kind of grab them and hold on to them and could sort of put them in a stand. She's like, oh, honey, I'm going to take care of them. I'm going to take care of it. It was just, anyway, so I think of her a lot. Anyway, all that to say, you do the homework ahead of time, and then each night before I start the show, I don't like to talk to anybody before the show starts. I get very, very, very quiet. And so I just sort of sit in my dressing room. I'm usually dressed by half hour. I'm not as dressed as Frankie is.
Dressed to undress.
In a uniform.
The uniform or your birthday suit. But no, we don't walk to the stage naked. But I get very, 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 very quiet and just try and imagine, what she's feeling, knowing that she's about to go on this date, given that she's not a social person anymore, and the excitement and the fear of that. And I just sit with that. And I don't even speak to Michael, and I don't speak before the show.
Really? You don't?
No. Well, not from half hour on. We don't. Right. We do fight call every night. So yeah,
right,
I smack him every night.
Right.
And shove him into a stove and all that stuff.
My old pal Lane Stritch used to frequent diners, but she never gave anyone flowers. She would steal the NutraSweet. She would. She'd put it all into her purse and walk out with it.
Very Elaine. Oh, God bless her.
Have you invited that woman to the play?
I haven't.
It would be fascinating for her to see.
You know what? Maybe I should. Maybe I should go back. I never told her that I was observing her.
She didn't know who you were.
No, and she didn't know that I was observing her. But maybe I should
get the surprise of her life.
Yeah, maybe I should go back to the Upper East Side where I found her and say, hey, you want to come see a show? But maybe it hit too close to home. She'd be like, oh my God, I want to see that.
That's not me up there.
How dare you?
So you've had an interesting association with Terrence McNally because you did Masterclass and Ragtime, which he wrote the book for, and now you're doing Frankie and Johnny in the Claire de Lune. What do you admire about Terrence as a writer?
The writing is always so brilliant. The rhythms, I don't know. He writes in a very musical way, and I think because I'm a musician and I started out as a singer and as a musician, I see the music in his writing, and so that helps me to understand the characters in a. I don't know if that sounds very
well. I think it's very true though, because Terrence is a huge classical music nut.
Yes, absolutely, and he's he has scored Frankie and Johnny. Frankie and Johnny is scored. There's no way you can't say that there is a soundtrack to this play. I mean, music is the other character in the play.
Absolutely.
But his rhythms are just so obvious, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean it's just so it just informs everything you need to know about the characters. And if you look at the way that Johnny speaks in these sort of like just almost as if he's going into like odes and arias basically, and Frankie is just staccato until she bumps up. In a way, he then will write an aria for her when she just can't hold back any the feeling. Like in the way, like in a musical, you would all of a sudden, well, we got to break into song here.
Right.
Johnny's almost always in song, and Frankie's very much just staccato and speaking. And then every once in a while, when the emotion gets too much for her, she breaks into an aria. And that just, I find that with all of his work, and so that's just always been very helpful to me.
Is he particular? I know he was very close to Edward Albee, and we were talking about Edward not too long ago, and Terrence told me, Edward would just listen to his plays as if they were radio plays, and then he would say to the actress, Audra, fourth page, second line, there's a comma. You missed it. Yeah. I'm wondering, is he that particular about what you're saying? When you're saying
yes,
his
he
words?
can be. He absolutely can be. I have to say, with this show, he although he was in rehearsal a lot, he was pretty hands off. Because it's not like the show needed a rewrite, or anything like that. The play didn't need a rewrite. It works. But he just sat there as sort of like a guiding presence, so we could ask questions if need be. And maybe the notes that we got from Aaron, maybe some of them came from Terrence, and we never knew about it. But mostly Terrence would just sort of sit there and answer any questions we had. But yes, he can be very particular about that. And he talks about Masterclass being one of his most autobiographical plays. And if there are many nuggets in there that are ideas and beliefs of Terrence's, and one of them is that Maria says to a student, "You must listen to the composer. The composer is God." And I don't think he means that in terms of
he's God.
No, not that he's God, but that the composer has done all the work for you.
Right.
So you must obey. You must obey. The composer has told you what to do.
Listen
to the composer.
Very appropriate parallel you draw with him. His language is like music.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because he leads you.
Yes.
He leads you the right way.
Yes.
If you pay attention.
If you pay attention. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. And so I'm kind of assuming here that we're all familiar with the story of Frankie and Johnny, so I don't want to do a spoiler alert, but, we did discuss the ending of the show. Do you find this to be a hopeful ending, and what do you think is the future for Frankie and Johnny?
I think it is an ending that has hope, but it's ambiguous, as to what will happen. I mean, I have thoughts on different nights depending on how the show went, whether they're going to make it past the next morning or if this is going to last. It really does depend on what kind of a show we had. And that's not a slam either, because some nights they're more combative and you think maybe he's just gotten her what Johnny will have achieved is just to at least let her see that there is possibility, not necessarily success with this relationship, but there is possibility. And other nights I think, well, they're getting along okay. This could, when they're not super aware and working on their verbs of him saying, you've got to stay in this relationship, we've got to have this, and her fighting to say, don't try and open me up. When they're not aware of that, they're very simpatico. And they, I think that, we don't see the date beforehand, but they obviously had a fantastic time on the date. And when they start talking about other things, about their moms or Shakespeare or anything like that, when they're not really aware, they do very well.
They're
together.
getting along.
They get along really well.
And as Frankie, do you believe Johnny is real, that he's being authentic, that he really wants a true connection, or that he's just trying to use you?
No, I think in the beginning it's confusing for her, and then she starts to look at it as cruelty. Because you can't possibly want these things and think these things and feel these things, so you're just being cruel. Because trying to offer me all of this stuff or flatter me in a way that obviously is not real is that's just mean. And so I think that's where she's at in the beginning. And then she has the moment with in the second act where things are getting very intimate with the two of them. And that's interesting to say in a show that starts with graphic sex, but in the second act when they're really starting to get intimate, and then he blows, pardon my pun, he blows it by asking her for a blowjob, but he does. And she gets very triggered by that. And then she starts to kind of, it's almost like he erases all the good he's done, because she goes right back to, all this has just been, you just, this all has been a lie. She even says, for just all his bullshit about marriage and kids and Shakespeare, you just want me to go down on you. That's all you want. I was right, and so he has to claw his way back from that as well.
Well, she's no fool.
No, she doesn't, and she doesn't suffer fools either. She's just been around the block. And if you look at the what the biography that Terrence allows us to see of these two characters. I mean, he was in foster homes. She didn't graduate from high school. She didn't have a mom around, and they have not had great lives.
Right.
No, they are lost and lonely.
Yeah, very lonely, very lonely.
It's a heartbreaking play for all of it. There's the intimacy, the tenderness, then the cruelty. It has so many shifting moods.
That's what, in some ways, and people ask me, what's harder, like doing Lady Day or doing, where it's just a one-woman show or this. I find this one in some ways more difficult, two-hander to be difficult because you have to be playing off of somebody else. And also for Frankie and Billy was our, Billy starts the show drunk. Yeah. And it's a low going lower with a few bumps into highs, but they're sort of, medically induced highs, or induced by the singing or whatever. But for the most part, it's just a slow, steady spiral
decline,
downward.
Yeah.
And Frankie is like someone who's been, someone who's been flatlined and gets jolted. So it's up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down. So it's all over the place, and it's running the gamut of emotions from A to Z within 2 lines. Yeah. And that's in some ways more exhausting, I think.
So you can go back and forth between musicals and plays. You looking forward to another big, full-on $15 million musical starring Audra McDonald?
Well, sure. I mean, of course. Who wouldn't want to do a big $15 million musical? But this is a very deliberate choice for me to do Frankie and Johnny. The last show I did was Shuffle Along. Yep. Knocked Up and Tapping and all that, and I loved that experience, and I'm sad that it closed when it did. I loved that experience. I loved learning that history and working with those people and Savion and George and that entire cast. It was an incredible experience. But I'm constantly trying to evolve. You want to continue to move forward and to evolve, in your work and your craft. And I got to continue to learn things. And so I knew this would push me way, way outside of my comfort zone, in the way that tap dancing on stage pushed me way outside of my comfort zone as well. So this was a very deliberate choice to do something like this. And I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but when Tom Curtis sent me the email saying, "What do you think of this?" I knew immediately that.
And did you know the play pretty well before you?
I did. I'd never seen it. I've read it, and I've seen the movie, which is very different from the play. But no, I'd never. I knew the play very, very well. And so, and it's it's one that people will use a lot in acting classes. And while I didn't study at Juilliard, I took a class here or there, like at the Michael Howard Studios a million years ago, so I certainly knew it. But after Tom offered it to me and I said yes immediately, I then went to the Lincoln Center Library and watched Kathy. And thought, what the hell have I said yes to? Because, even though I knew the play, watching Kathy, she was brilliant. She was absolutely brilliant, and just did it with such ease, or it looked like it with such ease, the way she was able to navigate this character. And she's a very complicated character. And I thought, I can't do this. I did not mean to say yes. I meant to say no. But then I thought, I'm scared. I got to do it.
Watch out, they're going to give you Night Mother next if you're not careful.
We'll turn that into a musical.
There you go. All right, Audra, before we let you go, we do like to ask our guests for maybe 3 songs from the musical theater that have particular meaning for you, personal meaning for you.
This is really hard. And, okay, this is going to sound obnoxious, but my first one is going to be Wheels of a Dream.
Of course, yeah.
And that's not because of me, but because the time stood still for me the moment I heard that song the first time. And that was in the workshop of Ragtime up in Toronto, where only Stokes knew the music because he had done all the demos for Lynn and Steve. Right. And so we were all sitting around the table, and Steve Flaherty was playing the piano, and Stokes sang it. And in my little part, I think Lynn Ahrens chimed in and sang Sarah's part in that. And it was a moment that is burned in my brain, and time stood still. And as he was singing that last note, I just saw everything that this show was going to be. And I saw the trajectory. It's like your life stops, and I don't know, you see the rest of your life. I don't know. It was just one of those moments that just burned in my brain. And then ever since then, whenever I sing the song with Stokes, it's this, this sounds so weird, but it's a bit of an out-of-body experience for me. Every time I sing the song with him, I feel myself start to float away.
Right.
And so that's one.
Well, it is a beautiful song.
Yeah, it's a beautiful song. Let's see. I'm trying to, there's Edelweiss.
Oh, yeah.
And that's
the Austrian national anthem.
Yes, the Austrian national anthem, as they say.
But it's a really beautiful song.
It's a beautiful song, and my personal connection to it is when I was born, my uncle gave me a music box that has a couple of little birds around a little tree. 2 birds are getting married, and 1 bird is officiating, and it spins around and it plays Edelweiss. And when my parents were trying to figure out what to do with this hyperactive child, and they decided, you should maybe audition for this dinner theater that has this little children's group in it, and maybe you could, because you like to sing. We're trying to figure out what to sing. And my parents said, well, what about Edelweiss? You know that from the music box that Uncle Lloyd gave you. And so my dad went and played the piano for me at my first audition, and I sang Edelweiss. So that's
really
got a lot
of
meaning for me.
Absolutely.
And then I guess the third one, oh God, I guess the third one I'll probably say is Rainbow High. And just because before I even moved to New York, I was listening to Evita. I played Evita when I was 16 in my dinner theater.
You did.
And I was obsessed with Patty, and I had pictures of her on my wall, plastered all over my wall. And I would practice walking out of my little walk-in closet in my room, playing Evita, and I would sing Rainbow High, and I would lip sync it to her, and I'd try and do all the motions that she did and do the stances that she did, and that, I guess that comes to mind for me because it was, I knew so much that I wanted to be on Broadway, and that song is, talk about a want song. If there's a want song, that's it.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And that combined with it being Patty and what it meant to me and what it represented for me, and then I look back on that now, and I look back on that 15 and 16-year-old girl now, and
now you're Patti LuPone.
Well, no, but just sort of like
no pictures.
Yeah, no, put that phone away. I had my own little Patti LuPone moment during Rainy Day. Yeah,
really?
The phone rang, and lady, Billie Holiday wouldn't have known what a cell phone is.
No, of course not.
Right.
So I just started spinning in a circle. Can I say a bad word?
Sure.
I just started spinning in a circle as Billy saying, "What the fuck is that? What the
Oh, that's
fuck
good.
is that?"
You did it in character.
I stayed in character, but that was my way of having a Patti LuPone moment.
And it hasn't happened, Frankie and Johnny? Cell phones, everybody's being good?
We've had a few, but now the audience shames the audience member.
Yeah, that's
which is
true.
kind of,
You
you hear all
Yeah,
that.
that's very
So we don't. So in a way, you don't have to anymore. You've got bulldogs in the audience.
Yeah, we'll police it for you.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's so annoying because, as you say, you don't talk to anyone half an hour before, the intensity of this performance, the concentration that you have to have. And then technology just like
just
that
pops in,
Pulls us out.
Pulls you out completely. But so we, and also our ushers are really good because they're protecting us, so we don't have people videotaping the, the nudity. So the ushers are kind of also bulldogs that are, running around and sort of giving people the stink eye or taking phones. And
All right, don't miss Audra McDonald and Frankie and Johnny in the Claire de Lune at the Broadhurst Theater. How long are you there for? Is it
August 25th?
August 25th? Not
Yes,
much time.
Not much time.
Great performance.
Yes.
Well, she always gives a great performance.
I know.
Thank
Hello,
you guys.
hello, 7th Tony Award.
No. That's all done. I promise you.
All right. Audra McDonald, thanks a lot for
Thank
being
you
our
so
guest
much.
on
Thank you,
Inside
guys.
Broadway. That does it for Christine and me. Please follow us. If you are listening on the iHeartRadio app or on your computer, just hit follow so you always know when we put up a new episode, and we post a new one every Friday. Don't miss out. We'll talk to you next time.
See you next time,
Inside
Michael.
Broadway.